Okay. Hey, everybody. This is Justin Carter. I'm one of the resident DJs and co-founders here at Nowadays. Tonight, we're hosting a panel with Legal Services NYC to answer questions about unemployment, housing, public benefits, small business assistance, and a few questions about immigration during this period of self-isolation because of the coronavirus. I'm going to act as the moderator for tonight's session. And just so you know a little bit about Legal Services, they're a nonprofit organization dedicated to providing legal services to low-income New Yorkers. They've been around for over 50 years, and they have a lot of experience with helping people navigate issues that we'll be talking about tonight. Before we jump in, I want to give a special thanks to Isabel Figueroa, who is a part of the Nowadays community and one of the attorneys working for Legal Services NYC. She's one of the people that's speaking tonight. She reached out to us very early on and has already given avenues of assistance to a number of people on our staff, and she's the person who facilitated this session tonight. So, Isabel, thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Justin.
Yeah. Joining Isabel tonight are Nicole Salk and Andrea Tan. Isabel will address issues related to housing for renters, as well as public benefits like SNAP or cash assistance. Nicole will address issues related to unemployment, and Andrea will address issues related to small business assistance. We're going to let each of them speak, and then I might ask them a few questions that people have sent in advance, and maybe some clarifying questions. And then after all three of them have had a chance to address their areas of expertise, we'll field questions from the chat room. Just so you know, we have someone monitoring in the chat room throughout this session. So at any point that you have a question, just post it in there. And when the Q&A time comes, I'll be able to deliver your questions then. We'll also be making a Google Doc with helpful links and phone numbers that are mentioned in this broadcast. And we'll share this in the chat room at the end of the session, on our Patreon when we post it there, and to a YouTube channel where we'll be posting this without a paywall because we want everyone to have access to all the info being discussed tonight. So, without further ado, we're going to jump into it. We'll start with Isabel, who again is going to talk about housing for renters as well as public benefits, as well as who is eligible for assistance from Legal Services and how to access help from them. Isabel, thank you again for doing this. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Justin. Thanks so much for having us. And thank you to all of you listening out there for participating. Honestly, events like this give me so much confidence because it really demonstrates that we're all pulling together in a really strong way. So thank you so much for having us today. Again, I'm Isabel. I'm an attorney at Legal Services. We're the largest provider of free civil legal services in the nation. I'm in the LGBTQ advocacy unit, and like Justin said, I'm going to be talking today, though, about housing and public benefits. We know before that, getting into that, a few housekeeping matters. We know that this is a really, really overwhelming and stressful time for a lot of us. And I want to make sure that you guys know that we're available to answer your questions after this session. The fastest and most efficient way for you to reach us is going to be through our access line. If you or someone you know is in need of legal assistance and needs to speak with somebody, call our access line at 917-661-4500. We can help folks in any language. Our intake staff is absolutely incredible. They are really good at answering all your questions. They'll point folks to resources and match you with an attorney that's going to be an expert in your area, matter that you're calling about.
Isabel, I just want to stop you for just a second because there was a little glitch when you read out that number. Can you repeat it one more time?
Yep, that number is our access line. It's 917-661-4500.
Thank you.
All right. And on another note, if you are listening and head up an organization that you think could benefit from a training like this, definitely just reach out to the access line, let them know that you were in this session and you'd like to set one up with me, Izzy, at the Brooklyn office. So everything you're going to hear in this presentation is not legal advice, right? This is for information purposes only. If you're in need of legal advice, like I said, just call the hotline and we'll go from there. So I'm going to be talking about housing for renters first. And we're going to go over what New York's doing, We'll go over rent, roommates, issues like harassment and illegal lockouts, and then a little bit at the end about community responsibility. So New York so far has two major protections that you should know about, in addition to its other pretty robust protections for tenants, including a judicial memo that was issued on March 15th, closing all courts for non-essential purposes. And right now, evictions are covered under the non-essential proceedings. So the courts are closed, and the courts are not hearing any cases for eviction at the moment. Also, Governor Cuomo signed an executive order on March 20th, putting a 90-day moratorium on evictions that goes for commercial and residential evictions. So from 90 days from March 20th, so that's around mid-June, courts are closed, there are no evictions, and a landlord right now cannot start a proceeding against you. And any existing housing court cases that you may have, if you have a court date on the calendar that falls within that 90-day moratorium, is postponed until further notice. The courts, I believe, are telling people to watch out in the mail for maybe a postcard or something that they might send to folks. If you want to double check on an active proceeding, go ahead and call the court, or you can look up by your court document index number on the internet. But right now, there are no evictions taking place in New York. Landlords, however, because rent is still due, can still demand in written form or send you a written notice for rent, right? They can send you a notice that says, this is how much you owe and we expect payment. And they can also tell you that they will follow up or expect to follow up with court proceedings. The only thing is that right now they cannot act upon it until the moratorium is lifted and courts reopen. The same thing goes for utilities. If you are worried about your utility bill, you can't pay your gas and electric, you might be racking up arrears, but your utilities cannot be until further notice shut off at the moment. So that's the most important stuff right now, and then I'm going to go over a little bit as to what that means for you. So the number one thing to remember here is that there's moratoriums on evictions, but a moratorium on eviction is not the same thing as excused rent. That means that you are still, during this period of time, you're still on the hook for the money that you're supposed to be paying in rent. And this is where we get into a little bit of the bad news of the presentation. But unfortunately, there's, people are really racking up some rental arrears because we're all going through a really hard time and making some tough financial choices. But currently there's no comprehensive plan or policy in place to deal with those built-up arrears. So once that moratorium is lifted, as it stands, it's possible that your landlord could commence an action in court to sue you for the non-payment of your rent. So we know that there are existing rental assistance programs that I'll get into a little further down in the presentation, but we also don't have information because we know that there's going to be a high volume of people applying for assistance after this is over. We don't really have information yet as to how that's going to be distributed or how that's going to, the volume of applications is going to be handled. So, just to let you know that's where we're at on a policy level. So I'm going to talk a little bit as to who is protected from eviction at this time, right? Because I know there's a lot of people with diverse rental situations. The answer is that all renters are protected, right? That means if your name is not on the lease, if you're subletting, if you've got roommates and you're paying your rent to a roommate, all renters are protected by the moratorium against evictions. So that means that since roommates and prime tenants even have to go through housing court to evict somebody, and the court is closed, if you are a roommate or you're subletting to somebody, you cannot commence an eviction proceeding against them at this time. If you're having trouble at home with somebody that you're subletting to, or you're in a difficult roommate situation, at this time, I would strongly consider the use of an intermediary, like a mediator or a trusted friend that can help you resolve some of your issues in a way that makes sense for you guys. And I'm going to mention this piece, and I really, really hope that none of you out there are experiencing a situation where this is something that you'd consider or have to think about. But at the moment, New York does have a lot of really great domestic violence resources. You find yourself in a position where you feel unsafe at home for whatever reason, I would strongly encourage that you reach out to those resources. If you feel like there needs to be some additional action taken, domestic violence is one of the essential proceedings that family court is going to be hearing. So if you are in a situation, again, unfortunately, I've been hearing that this is happening. Landlords are taking more measures than written rent demands to ask people for their rent at this time because everyone's under a lot of pressure. If you end up in a situation where you're being harassed by your landlord, so long as you don't feel like you're unsafe at the moment, take a moment to document all of those instances of harassment and try to switch your communication with your landlord from something verbal like a phone conversation to a written form of communication like in writing or directly or in an email. If you end up for some reason in a housing court after this, being able to say that you are harassed and being able to show that you are harassed by your landlord is something that can help you in a housing court proceeding for not paying rent. If you end up, and again, God forbid, but if you end up in a situation where a landlord or a roommate decides to take matters into their own hands and illegally locks you out of your home, then remember I said housing court is still open for some emergency matters. And illegal lockouts, like if you get home and the locks are changed, are one of the few proceedings that housing court will deal with at this time. So definitely call the court if you would like to file a proceeding and figure out and get some information on how to do that through them, or you can call our hotline and we can accompany you. And same goes for if you end up having some emergency repairs. So say during this period of time, your ceiling caves in and something is going on in your apartment that makes it unsafe or makes the place uninhabitable at the moment, then you can also file an emergency repairs action in housing court. I know that's a lot of information, but if you're going to take anything away from all of that, just know that all renters right now, regardless of how diverse your situation is, are protected from eviction until that moratorium is lifted and the courts reopen. But at the same time, you are still accruing some rental arrears because there's no other plan in place at the moment. So I do want to go over one thing that I've been hearing a lot when I've been getting calls, which is this, it's a half truth, but I think it's worth mentioning and clearing up. A lot of people are saying that, hey, why should I be paying rent when I think that my landlord is getting some kind of a huge break on their mortgage right now? Well, it's a valid question, right? Because if your landlord's not paying your mortgage, then why should you be paying rent? The answer is actually a little bit more complicated than that. There are a lot of mortgage assistance programs out there. Unfortunately, none of them excuse tenants from paying rent at this time. And on top of that, there are a lot of landlords that just don't qualify for the programs, or the programs are set up in a way that impose such high penalties on the landlords that they really are not able to access those programs or have reasons not to. So when your landlord says, no, I really am relying on your rental income for my mortgage payment or some other payment that's necessary in the building, and you're unsure as to whether or not that's a genuine thing, the fact of the matter is that we just don't have enough information to know which landlords are receiving that kind of a break, and it's a more complicated situation for a lot of New York landlords. So the burning question, I guess, of all of this in everyone's mind that I do want to take head on and hopefully leave you guys with some tools that you can use when you're considering those really tough decisions you're going to be facing over the, or have already faced or going to be facing for the next few months, is should I pay my rent or not, right? a lot of us are in a situation where, we've got the money now, but we're choosing between renting food, or we've got a little saved up in the account and we're really choosing between, what's going to go on in the future. I don't know when the next time I'm going to see a paycheck is, and I might need this money to survive later on. The simple answer to that question is not simple, right? It's going to be a household by household decision that you're going to have to make based on, armed with the information that you're getting, as you're looking through the information stuff that we're presenting, and as you go online. But as it stands, if you haven't suffered from a loss of income, you should pay your rent because you're still liable for that rent. Your arrears are stacking up, and at this point, there's nothing that's exists in the foreseeable future for you to be excused from paying that rent 3 months from now. If you can't afford to pay your rent, like I just talked about, there are some things that you might consider doing just to put yourself in a better situation after this. The first thing that you can do is communicate with your landlord. A lot of landlords right now are also in really difficult positions. So, it's sometimes an intimidating thing to do, but opening a channel of communication with your landlord about the financial situation that you're in, and maybe communicating about when you might expect to pay partially or fully, might be helpful to you in staving off a future court proceeding if you're just silent about not paying rent. And it also might give you an opportunity to have a channel open so that when you are able to negotiate something that works for you, that you have that relationship already. If you are applying for public benefits or unemployment and you expect to be able to dedicate some of that to your rent or your arrears, it might be helpful to let your landlord know that you've applied, and if you are eligible and you receive income, that you could probably put something towards rent. But if you're going to negotiate with your landlord, I would avoid at all costs committing to consequences such as a move out. At this point, it's not advisable to agree to a payment date that could lead to you agreeing to move out of your apartment if you're not able to pay by that date. Again, it's a really tough time, so I know that these conversations are really hard to have. I'd encourage, if you are able to, enlist the support of a mediator. I know that the New York Peace Institute does have mediation services. I'm not sure about their digital capacity right now, but I do know that they have taken landlord-tenant disputes in the past, and I've used them in the past. Finally, I'll talk a little bit about one other thing that I've heard a lot people have been considering, and I've heard this word thrown around a lot: rent strike. That's something that a lot of people have been talking about, trying to organize or participate in. And if you want to learn a little bit more about what that is, I strongly recommend that you go online. There's lots of tenant organizers and tenant organizations, like Right to Counsel is one that has really good information as to what those are. But I'm going to talk a little bit about the legal consequences of the decision to participate or not participate in the rent strike. Number one, you don't have an intrinsic right to withhold your rent. Your landlord can still, even if other people in your building are doing it, your landlord can still come after you personally for that unpaid rent. And if you're doing it because you want to join in solidarity with your neighbors, say your building's doing it, they're like, we really need you to participate, that's a really compelling reason. But understand that later on, if a judge were to ask you, well, why didn't you pay your rent? And come to find out that you did not lose your income and you could have paid, because my neighbors were doing it too, isn't going to be something that's going to really help you very much in a housing court proceeding in the future. So without encouraging you or discouraging you one way or the other, I'll say just do your research and be aware of the potential legal consequences down the line. Before moving on to the public benefits portion, this community, the Nowadays community especially, is a really awesome community, and y'all have such big hearts. And I do want to talk a little bit about the context of our decisions right now, right? We're all kind of in a really, really tough spot, and so are the communities that we live in. So when we're making decisions about rent, it's really important to also consider the context about, the communities that might have historically or traditionally been targeted for foreclosure, such as Brownsville, Bed-Stuy, East New York, and Canarsie. A lot of those families depend on rental income for their survival, and it's really important to take that into consideration as well. And right now, it is, I know it sounds like we went through a lot of really difficult to hear information, but I will say that right now we're at an interesting time where participation at the hyper-local level has a lot of impact and is really important. If it's something that you feel compelled to do, you can talk to your local electeds about what you're going through and your situation and the people around you are going through, and reach out to community and neighborhood initiatives. So I hope that this information is helpful in your decision making in the months to come. It's really, really difficult, but more important than anything else is that you take care of yourself, take care of your families, and stay safe. Before Nicole comes on and talks about unemployment a little bit, I do want to get to a little bit of information on public benefits.
Izzy, before you do that, pardon me for interrupting you, but yes. I want to ask a couple questions about rent. One, what is the name of the mediation group that you mentioned again?
The New York Peace Institute.
The New York Peace Institute. And what is the name of the website or organization that you were talking about where you can read more about what a rent strike is? And
Right to Counsel.
What is it called?
Right to Counsel.
Right to Counsel. That's C-O...
I can send you some follow-ups so that you can add that to the Google document if that's interesting.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and that's, well, because Gareth is adding to the document right now. That's Counsel, C-O-U-N-S-E-L, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Spelling quiz, yes it is.
Yeah, sorry. And, well, maybe we talked about me following up with you after you did your whole presentation, but if it's okay with you, I think it might be a good thing to just ask a couple clarifying questions about rent before we move into public benefits. Is that okay with you?
Sounds great.
Okay, great. I want to make sure that everyone understands how domestic violence is defined, because I think we often think of domestic violence as, a romantic partner that you live with being physically abusive, or a parent or a family member. But correct me if I'm wrong, it is not limited to that. Domestic violence would be anyone that you're living with being violent.
In a situation like this, roommates have been considered members of the household in order to, bring something in family court. This isn't my direct area of expertise, so if you're facing a situation like this, definitely call the hotline and get a little bit more information based on your unique situation. But in this context, family court would be a great resource. Also, there are tons of other organizations in New York that deal with this, and they're totally equipped to counsel anyone through those kinds of issues as they come up.
Okay, thank you. And when you were talking about...
and Andrea, I think, has something to add.
Hi. I wanted to add that if you want to read the description of the actual law that protects domestic violence survivors in housing situations, you could look up in Google the Real Property Law, section 227C. And then that's going to guide you to the social services law that describes who is a domestic violence survivor and what are the instances where it counts for protection in housing. And in addition to domestic violence protections, there are also protections for senior citizens that need to break their lease early so that they can move to a home or be with their families to be taken care of.
Okay, great. Thank you guys both for that. Izzy, when you were talking about moving communication from verbal communication into writing, you mentioned, a letter, and I think you mentioned email as well. Is a text message also considered in writing communication with a landlord?
Yeah, a text message would be something that's considered in writing.
Okay, great.
But I'm not saying that as an evidentiary standard per se, but that'll be helpful if you have a text exchange.
Okay. And I have some longer questions, but just one short clarifying question. Something that you mentioned to me when we were talking about rent on a phone call we had previously was about understanding the consequences of going to housing court. Like that going to housing court, while we may find, after this is all said and done and there is a bulk of cases coming into housing court, maybe there will be sympathy from judges towards the situation, but there is a consequence of going to housing court in and of itself. Can you explain that a little bit?
Right. So I think when we were talking, right, I was hopeful that the fact that the sheer number of what the situation really means will mean that if you do end up in housing court, there'll be some kind of, support that you could receive, or, judges might be a little bit, like you said, a little bit more lenient and understanding of people's situations. But number one, if you end up having a judgment entered against you, that can be reported to credit agencies, so it can affect your credit. And number two, if you are named in the housing court proceeding, those records are unfortunately public. So that means that it is possible for future landlords to look up if you've ever had a housing court proceeding brought against you. So those are two things to consider.
Right. And I mean, I feel like this feels so doom and gloomy for folks that are having a hard time like paying their rent right now. And I mean, just from a personal perspective, and please tell me if you feel like I'm stepping out of line here. My hope is that future landlords who, in better times than right now, that looked into that kind of system, that you would be able to tell them, hey, during this pandemic, I couldn't pay rent and I had a landlord who was really disagreeable and they took me to court and here's what happened. Like, I mean, does that, obviously you can't counsel somebody to do that as a lawyer, but I think just taking into account like the extreme situation that we're in right now is important. And I wouldn't get so scared of the eventuality of you being taken to housing court. I wouldn't get so scared by that you take money that you could use for food or other basic sustenance for yourself and throw that to your landlord right now if you're really in a dire situation. That's my personal take here.
Yeah, and like I said, it's really a personal decision, right? Like we're making really, really, really difficult choices right now. And, if you do end up in a situation where at the end of this you're in housing court, our organization, lots of organizations in the city are equipped to accompany you through that process. So, you don't have to feel like you're going to be alone when you're going through something like that. But it's, it's definitely a set of circumstances to consider. And it's definitely a set of circumstances to consider.
Do you want to get into the, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, what were you going to say?
I was just going to ask if you wanted to get into public benefits now, because that's the last clarifying question that I had. But do you have other thoughts on that before you move forward?
Right. So that's why I was bringing up kind of throughout the course of, what I thought was kind of are important things to consider right now are the ways that we can strategize around avoiding housing court in the future, if that's something that you are concerned about. Right? Communicate with your landlord early. Establish a line of communication that you can use to maybe ask them later on to refrain from bringing or delay from bringing a housing court proceeding because they've gotten a sense that you're a communicative person and you can, follow up on what you're going to do. So there are strategies around that. Any of us are happy to talk through those kinds of strategies if you're in that situation. But those alternative dispute resolution strategies right now might be something that you could consider if you can avoid going to housing court in the future. And that, I guess, well, that brings us to the public benefits piece of it, which is Nicole's going to talk a little bit after me about unemployment. But if you do find yourself in a position where you're not eligible for unemployment, or if despite receiving unemployment, your income is still super low, you might qualify for public assistance benefits. And I'm not going to go into all of the different qualification standards because that really depends on your household size and your income. But you should know that New York City is one of the places that has a pretty robust public benefit system, and it's designed to help low-income folks. It's administered predominantly through HRA, which is the Human Resources Administration. And, there are a couple benefits that you can get through HRA. A lot of people have already heard of food assistance benefits like SNAP, but there are also a whole bunch of other benefits like shelter assistance that can pay partial payments towards your rent or towards your rental arrears, cash assistance, emergency assistance, Medicaid, and as a part of the response to the crisis, HRA has moved all of its applications to online. You can still call, but there's still going to be a little component where you're going to have to upload documents. So if you go to the HRA website, which is accessible at access.nyc.gov, when you go there, there'll be a little tab that says, am I eligible? If you click the Am I eligible tab, then you can put in your household size and your income, and it'll do a quick diagnosis as to what benefits you might be eligible for applying to. If you're choosing to apply for public benefits, then you can download the HRA app or apply through their website. And the basic process is that you can use that to put in your information, upload your documents, and they'll follow up with you via phone to do an eligibility interview. If there are documents that, when you look at the document list online, that you think that they're asking for that you're missing, at the moment, they should be letting people vouch, I believe in writing, in a written attestation for information regarding the documents that they're going to be requesting, other than your identity or your immigration status. So those you're going to actually have to get documents and upload them. I think they're accepting documents if you just take the document, take a picture of it on your phone, and send it in. I think that's sufficient for now. I will caution people, though, if you're submitting a written attestation, HRA routinely comes after people for overpayment of benefits. So if you're making representations without additional documentation attached, then you should be aware that if for some reason that information is a misrepresentation of your income or some other important matter, then HRA you might be liable for the money that you end up receiving, but we're not eligible for. We do have a dedicated portion of our access line that is specifically for helping people open these online public assistance benefits applications. And so if you go online and you're having trouble opening one up, or if you open an application and then there's something down the line that's an issue for you, or you've got a loved one who doesn't have access to the internet, you can direct them to our hotline and tell them that you're calling about public benefits, and somebody will be able to assist you with that. If you are concerned, though, about the overlap between your immigration status and public benefits, I would say in that instance, definitely call our hotline, because there's so many nuances right now that it might be a good idea for you to actually have a one-on-one conversation with someone who's an expert and can help walk you through. We can't help you through the long wait times and all the time that it's taking HRA to actually process the applications. And you probably at this point might have more information than even we do as to how quickly they're getting through the stack of applications that they have. But we are here, we're available, and we're happy to help with anything that. So, thanks. And any follow-up questions, Justin?
Let's see. No, I think, sorry, hold on one second here. No, I think, oh, well, yes. Can you give us examples of how you would prove your income status when you're applying for these programs? Are you showing people, are you uploading?
There's a pretty comprehensive list of acceptable documents.
Okay.
And that's all through the website. If you are unable to produce any of the documents that are being requested, you should be able to get your application processed via a written attestation.
Okay.
So
a written attestation basically being something where you just say,
because
hey,
we do understand that a lot of employers are closed and you might not have something while you're sheltering in place. So the only thing that you can't ostensibly can't vouch for is your identity and proof of immigration status.
Right, but otherwise, when you say written attestation, you're talking about just writing a basic letter that says, I used to work here, I don't have a job anymore, or whatever.
No, as far as we know, that's what you're supposed to be doing. But if anyone is having a different experience, please do let us know so that we can have the information that we're communicating as well.
Okay. Well, yeah, I've got no more clarifying questions, so I think we can move on to Nicole Salk, who's going to talk about unemployment. Nicole, thank you so much.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to very soon share my screen and give a explanation of unemployment and some of the new programs that passed through the CARES Act. But before I do that, I just want to say thank you so much, Izzy, who has done a lot of housing work. And before I was doing employment and unemployment, when I first came into legal services, I was a housing attorney, and we were a much smaller group at that time. There's a much bigger group. There's a lot of folks who do this work. And I also just want to give a little bit of hope to folks that, this is a city that has some of the best rent protections in the entire country. And we maybe should all be thinking about the history of, what we've had here, which is rent control and rent stabilization, and where that came from, it was from huge tenant movements. And they've done a lot of work in the past. And even though, we are a hugely gentrifying city, we still have, majority tenant populations, and we still have a lot of power. And it's just something to think about in these really dismal times, the fact that there's so many of us who really can come together and work together to really protect ourselves together. So I just wanted to say that. I'm going to share my screen. And I'm going to bring up a PowerPoint, so I hope this is not too boring for everybody. There we go. All right. So I don't know if everybody can see this, but what I'm going to talk about, first of all, in terms of talking about unemployment, is regular state unemployment insurance benefits. Regular state unemployment insurance benefits are the things that most folks have. Can folks hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
I just checked to make sure that your screen share has come up on the stream. It indeed has. So go for it.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah. Okay, so with state unemployment insurance benefits, many folks may be eligible for it, and there's a lot of myths about it. You don't have to have worked for the same employer for 6 months. That is a myth. You don't even have to necessarily have had been employed for the last 6 months. Basically, one of the things that is looked at for unemployment is monetary eligibility. And I'm actually going to bring up a screen. This is for regular state unemployment. And this is something anybody can get by just Googling New York Unemployment Department of Labor Benefits Estimator. And this is a nice little tool to help folks figure out if they're eligible for unemployment. I know a lot of folks have already probably applied if they've lost their jobs. But this is just something, if you haven't already applied, or if you're just curious about whether maybe you weren't, you didn't get approved in the past, but maybe you get approved in the future. This is essentially how the Department of Labor, and under the New York State Unemployment Insurance Law, somebody is considered eligible. They look at not the most recent quarter, but the 5 quarters of earnings that folks have prior to your current quarter that we're in. The current quarter that we're in is the second quarter of 2020. They do not look at any earnings in this quarter. Many of us don't have jobs anymore, and so of course they wouldn't be looking at that quarter. And they don't look at the most recent quarter either. They look at the 4 quarters of, if you were applying in April or after April, they look at the 4 quarters of 2019. And I just put in here, what the earnings would be of just someone who was earning less than minimum wage, working maybe less than 35 hours, except for the most recent period where their wages went up. But I just wanted to show everyone that, because I wanted to show folks how some folks might actually be eligible to bring their unemployment insurance benefits up if they have more recent higher earnings. And so if you have if your earnings in the most recent quarter were higher, it may very well be, using this benefits calculator for unemployment insurance, that your benefit rate is going to be much higher. Now, this is very low. This is does not include the additional $600 that a lot of people have been talking about, but this is what someone would get from unemployment per week. And then because of the CARES Act, which I'll talk about in a minute, there's an additional $600 that will be added on to this. So you get, you might get $230 if they're looking at the whole year of 2019, and it'll be another $600 per week, or $830 per week from April 5th until the end of July. And if folks have higher earnings more recently, there's quite a difference in the amount that they could be receiving. So that's just something to be aware of. If you have higher earnings, you're going to ask for something called the alternate base period if you have higher earnings in the most recent quarter. So I'm going to talk about regular unemployment insurance. Then I'm also going to talk about something called pandemic emergency unemployment compensation. And what that is, pandemic emergency unemployment compensation never existed before. This was just passed by the Congress. This is for folks who may have been unemployed in the last year or so and exhausted all of their unemployment benefits after July of last year, after July of 2019. Typically, people get about 6 months or 26 weeks of benefits during any given year for unemployment when they lose their job. And that is now going to be extended out another 13 weeks. And so if folks have exhausted in the prior year their benefits, they may be eligible for an additional 13 weeks of benefits. Typically you get 26. Now you're going to get another 13. And if you're just applying right now, you can get up to 39 weeks of benefits under the legislation that just passed. I'm also going to talk about pandemic unemployment assistance, or PUA as we call it, or PUA. This is for folks who may have not been eligible because they were not employees. Because normally for regular unemployment insurance, you have to be getting a W-2 and you have to be working as an employee under the unemployment insurance law. So this is for folks who might be self-employed or independent contractors. They might be eligible for pandemic unemployment assistance. It's also for folks for whatever reason may not have qualified for regular unemployment insurance, but lost their job due to COVID-19, or maybe were about to start a job and that job didn't kind of disappeared because of COVID-19, or some other reason. So it could be that somebody, didn't have sufficient wages, was working but was working and maybe only making $100 a week. So they wouldn't qualify for regular unemployment assistance, but they might then qualify because they lost that job. They might then qualify for pandemic unemployment assistance or PUA. Then the other thing, and I just mentioned this before, is something called pandemic unemployment compensation. And that essentially, PUC, that essentially is just a $600 add-on from April 5th through the end of July of 2020 that goes on top of regular unemployment if you qualify for regular unemployment. If you don't qualify for regular unemployment, there's a good chance you might qualify for pandemic unemployment assistance that I just mentioned. That will go on top of whatever that rate. And it'll be a similar rate for regular unemployment as it would be for pandemic. And typically, the rate for unemployment is typically we generally have what your average weekly wage is. So if you were earning $600 per week on average, your benefit's going to be about $300 a week. The best way to check out exactly what it might be is to look at on that benefit rate calculator, which I just shared with folks.
Nicole, if it's
So
possible,
I'll just give some examples of folks who might be eligible for regular unemployment, and then I'll give examples of folks who might be eligible for pandemic unemployment, which is the other new unemployment. So typically the most common folks who would be eligible for regular unemployment is folks who are monetarily eligible. As I just described, you have to see if you have sufficient wages to establish a claim. And you have to have lost your job through no fault of your own. So if the business closed, or if you're still employed but you've been furloughed, that counts as a lack of work, and you would be eligible for unemployment if you're monetarily eligible. It may also be a situation where your kid's school has closed and the business has closed. And normally with unemployment, you have to be looking for work and you have to be available for work. But we take a very sort of broad view, and we think that the Department of Labor may as well during this time about what it means to be available for work. So even though you're maybe home with your kids, you may be able to do work from home. You may be able to look for work from home to do at home. And another example of someone who might be eligible for regular unemployment is somebody who has some kind of immune issue or medical condition that puts them at risk for a job that they, for example, working at a grocery store, or somebody in their household might have some issues. And if they are coming home to them, they may feel like they have to quit, which is totally understandable at this time. It is harder to get unemployment when you quit. It is definitely harder. It's sometimes a fight, but it is allowed. A quit for good cause is allowed for regular unemployment. And you just have to try to do everything you can to try to hold on to that job. So sometimes talking to your employer about some kind of an accommodation. There's some jobs that can be done from home. Obviously, not all jobs can be done from home. Or something that would allow you to keep the job. In many instances, that can't be done nowadays, but you have to at least make some kind of effort to try to keep the job if you can. Maybe ask for a leave of absence, for example.
Nicole, I'm sorry to interrupt you here.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the way that I'm broadcasting out of my computer screen, the document that you're showing is quite small. Can you go to View and change it to Preview mode? I think in your top menu.
Yes. Preview mode. I don't see that.
Or it may be up top in the
maybe.
top bar there, where you've got PowerPoint, File, Edit, View.
Is this good?
There you go. Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that, guys.
Wonderful. Thank you.
So the other example I want to give, and this is one that is very confusing to folks, and I use the example of Uber drivers, but really this could be for anybody who is misclassified. So what does that mean? So a lot of folks these days are really actually employees under the law, and that's it's more of an art than a science. But clearly, for example, Uber drivers, at least in the state of New York, this is not true in all 50 states. But in the state of New York and also in the state of California, Uber drivers are definitely employees of Uber. They are misclassified improperly by Uber. But those folks would absolutely be eligible for regular state unemployment, are eligible for regular state unemployment. I've helped many drivers get unemployment, Uber drivers. And if the work of an Uber driver has gone down substantially and it declines at least more than 10%, and that's true probably for every single Uber driver because there's just not as many people out there going into cars, obviously. Those folks would be eligible for regular unemployment. So these are just going through some of the monetary eligibility. One of the things that I really always like to remind people about, and this is for folks who've applied or are going to be applying, is that you have to certify for benefits on a weekly basis for unemployment. I'll talk about the fact that it's best to try to apply online if you can. Really important if you can apply online and to do your weekly certifications online, and just to be really careful about how you certify for benefits, that you're looking for work, that you're available for work. And if you have had any kind of work, you need to let them know that because generally they will find out anyway, especially if it's W-2 work. They're going to know if you've had work because that information gets reported to the tax authorities and then to the Department of Labor. So some of the questions that have come up in regards to regular unemployment, and again, I'll go into pandemic, the new unemployment for folks who don't traditionally qualify. How long does it last? As I said, it typically lasts 26 weeks in any given year, and you can be working and then you can be unemployed and then working for a short period and then go back on, and your claim lasts for a year. So it's any 26 weeks or 104 days during that period of time. Now there's an additional 13 weeks pursuant to that's added on to that 26 weeks for a total of 39 weeks that people can get for unemployment. As I said, though, whatever your benefit rate is, let's say your benefit rate is $300, you'll get an additional $600 potentially from April 5th through the end of July. So that's a decent amount of money. That's basically a way to to feed yourself and maybe even to pay your rent for that short period of time anyway, which is great. And so it's really important that folks apply if they can for unemployment and assess whether they might be eligible. I mentioned about getting potentially a higher rate. You will get a monetary benefit determination within a week or two. It seems to be taking a lot longer for folks right now, but typically you get something in the mail. You're supposed to get something in the mail indicating what your benefit rate is, and it indicates who are the employers. They look at all of those wages during 4 quarters, and if there's something missing that you might be able to potentially get a higher rate from, where you're not at the maximum. The highest rate you can get in New York State is 504. That's the maximum rate. If you're not at 504, and potentially you could bring using that benefits calculator that I showed folks, you could bring up your rate by looking at this monetary benefit determination that it will eventually get to people through the mail. And maybe if you want, you can bring it up by looking at the most recent period and choosing the most recent period to bring it up if you have higher earnings more recently. Now, folks in New York are able to work part-time and collect unemployment. Unfortunately, I hate to say this, we have probably the worst partial unemployment law in the entire country, but this is how it works, and it's important to understand it so that you can try to maximize your benefits. This is how it works. If you work 4 or more days during the course of a week, you are not eligible for unemployment. It doesn't matter how little or how much you're receiving. If you are working 4 or more days, you will not receive unemployment. So it's best, if there's any way possible, to put the part-time work that you're doing, if at all possible, it's not always possible to do it, into less than 4 days a week, to 3 days, 2 days, or 1 day. Also, you cannot earn more than 504 in any given week to be able to collect unemployment. So that's just something to think about. And your benefits will be reduced by 1/4 for every day that you're working. So if you're working, excuse me, if you're working 1 day, you'll get 75%. If you're working 2 days, you'll get 50% of your benefit rate. And if you're working 1 day, you'll get 25% of your benefit rate. Excuse me. Many non-citizens are actually eligible for unemployment. It's the big issue is whether or not you have work authorization. Did you have work authorization during the period that they look at to determine that monetary eligibility? And do you have work authorization now? So, so obviously permanent residents are folks who continuously have work authorization. And another example of folks who would be eligible for unemployment are folks who have DACA. We have been told time and time again that there is no issue in terms of public charge. It should not affect your ability to get citizenship at a later date, because unemployment benefits are not public assistance in the same way. So there's not that kind of concern for folks who are applying for unemployment. I'd like to talk about that because I want to get to PUA. So let me talk a little bit about pandemic unemployment assistance. So again, this is for folks who are not eligible for state unemployment benefits. Folks who are not eligible for state unemployment benefits have often been those who are self-employed or independent contractors. And so, it is generally an employer who pays into the system for unemployment. And if you're self-employed, that money is not going in. And those folks have been shut out of getting unemployment when they've lost their work. Congress passed this a few weeks ago under the CARES Act, called Pandemic Unemployment Assistance. And essentially, it would allow self-employed folks to apply for unemployment. There's now, what was happening before in the last few weeks, they had like 3 different applications, very confusing. You had to apply for regular unemployment insurance, be denied, and then apply for pandemic. If you're applying now, there's a new streamlined application. I looked at it today. I am not 100% happy with how it looks. I think it's a little confusing, but it is better than it's been, and it does allow you to apply all at once for state unemployment and for PUA, and it helps people who don't necessarily know if they're eligible for one or the other to be able to sort of do one application at one time. And I think what I would say is folks who are having trouble right now stuck in the system of unemployment, meaning if your application is currently pending, or you haven't heard back, you're supposed to get a phone call from the Department of Labor, or something is stuck. This is what we're hearing from so many people right now, that folks have applied and they're waiting and waiting and they're really desperate. It's hard for me to give advice as to what exactly you should do. What we are hearing anecdotally is that the best way to move your application along is to go to the New York State Department of Labor Twitter sites, believe it or not, and tweet and direct message the Department of Labor. That seems to be helping people get phone calls. I don't know if it's helping people get approvals, but it's helping to move the applications along. Also, there may be situations, very specific situations, where if you've been denied or a mistake has been made, you should definitely call our hotline and try to reach out to us. I'm not sure if we can necessarily break the logjam, but we can at least assess, I think, whether we think you might be eligible, and try to give you some strategies on how to try to get those benefits to you as quickly as possible. We're no better at sort of breaking through, because it's just like literally 1 million people are applying at the same time. And so where we used to be able to reach out to the Department of Labor by email, we don't have that same ability now. So we're no better, frankly, than anybody else in sort of moving applications. But what we can do is we can tell people whether we think, they're eligible. And we can give you some strategies about, do you want to try to pull your application and apply again at a different time and that kind of thing. I know that there was also a question that was sent to us earlier about somebody who had requested a hearing. We may be able to help with that. Right now, no hearings are happening because they've closed down the hearings office. A lot of them were done in person. They are going to reopen. They are going to do all these hearings by phone. There is a huge queue for that, but I think it would be very helpful to talk to folks who have been denied unemployment. Call our hotline and talk to us and try to get some advice. And in some cases, we might be able to represent you. So just going back to pandemic unemployment for a second, we don't know exactly how they're going to decide what the pandemic unemployment assistance rate is going to be. There's been a lot of questions about, what documents are they going to want to prove income? Because typically, if you're applying for regular state unemployment, you are going to, if you look at that calculator that I showed you, your rate is going to be determined pretty much scientifically. They have a specific way that they have the W-2 income that's reported by your employers, and that information is already in there in the system, and it comes up automatically. That is not the case with freelancers. That's not the case with independent contractors. And so the way that we think that they're going to be doing it is if you filed, I know not a lot of people have done this yet, but 2019 tax returns is the thing that I think they will look at first and foremost, and they will probably be looking at folks' Schedule Cs, which is essentially your net income. They're going to be looking at your net income. They're going to ask you to certify to that. And they're going to ask you at some point probably to upload your Schedule C. If you don't have that for 2019, I think people can use it for 2018. We've heard that as well, that people are going to be able to provide that information that they will be looking at. As of now, we have not heard of a single person who's actually gotten pandemic unemployment assistance actually approved and received. We've gotten a lot of information where people have been found quote unquote eligible, but no one who's actually been approved and gotten their benefits. We hope that that will be moving along in the next couple of weeks, but we haven't actually been able to confirm if anybody's actually been approved at this point. For regular unemployment, of course, thousands and thousands and thousands of people have been approved, and there are thousands and thousands and thousands of people who are getting the benefits. So if there's a way to be eligible for regular state unemployment, obviously there's probably a benefit to that. The one benefit for pandemic unemployment that I would say is a better benefit for pandemic than it is for regular state unemployment is that the minimum benefit rate for pandemic unemployment is going to be higher than the rate for state unemployment. So you can't really choose if you're eligible for state unemployment. If you're eligible for state unemployment, you're going to get it. If you're not eligible, you may be eligible, and they're going to make that decision first and foremost. Are you eligible for regular state unemployment? Do you have any kind of W-2 income that would make you eligible? Even if you have mixed income, or do you have enough W-2 income that's going to make you eligible for state unemployment? You will be determined first for that. If you're eligible, that's what you will get. You'll probably get it quicker than you will get if you were eligible for if you weren't eligible for state unemployment and eligible for pandemic. But pandemic may give you potentially, it could potentially give you a slightly higher rate, because the lowest rate for pandemic is $192. Now remember that again, $600 goes on top of pandemic. It goes on top of the state unemployment rate. So if you are getting $182 in pandemic, you're going to get another $600 a week. So it's $782 per week from April 5th until the end of July. And after that, if you're still unemployed, you'll go back to the lower rate unless Congress extends that $600 PUC rate, that weekly PUC $600 add-on. We talked about how to apply. Right now, I can go into this a little bit more, but let me actually see if I can show you on the website. So This is where you apply for unemployment insurance on the Department of Labor website if you can. You can also apply on the phone. It's very hard to get through, although you can get an automated. You can call and get an automated system. But this is where you would apply. You would file a claim now, and you can go through potentially the entire claim and complete it online. The folks who may have difficulty completing the claim online are folks who may have, some employers who haven't showed up on there. So if you're self-employed, you'll just put self-employed in there. But if you have a real employer like Uber, they may have to be reaching out to you because unfortunately, Uber drivers who are employees are misclassified. And there's other folks who are misclassified as well. So if you're putting an employer into the application, it doesn't show up automatically because your employer is misclassified, you're not paid into the system. It is going to delay your application, but it is something where if, eventually when you get through to talk to somebody on the phone, you should eventually be able to prove that you are an employee and you're eligible for unemployment. That is also something that we might be able to advise you on. So I'm going to stop sharing now. Hello. If there's any questions.
First of all, thank you so much. I really appreciate you doing that. Let me see. I don't have any clarifying questions. So I think there are some questions that people emailed in with, and there are a couple questions that have come up in the chat room as well. But I think we should let Andrea speak.
Sure, absolutely.
And then we can come back and I can ask a number of questions that have been sent in to us, to all of you.
Hi everyone, thanks Nicole, thanks Justin, Izzy. I will be talking to all of you who are business owners, entrepreneurs, self-employed, about what's going on right now and things that you should know about. I'm gonna get started by talking to you about some tips that will help you hopefully assess your business situation. Then I'm gonna talk to you about the financial programs that are available, or what to do if they're no longer available. And then I'm gonna finally talk about things that you should consider when you're dealing with your landlord as a commercial tenant. So hopefully that can give you, hopefully that's helpful. So let's get started. So things that you should consider to assess your situation. First, you should make sure that you have cash available. Talk to your accountant, look at talk to your bookkeeper, look at your books and see how much cash you have, because cash is gonna be the answer for a lot of things that you will need. Two, you need to try to renegotiate any expenses that you may have. So look at what loans you have, what credit cards you have, and talk to your lenders. A lot of people are being able to negotiate forbearance agreements or defer their payments. So do that. Rent. Are you going to be able to continue paying your rent? Talk to your landlord about that, and we'll get to that later. And then also check your insurance policy. What is your insurance policy? Does it have any clause in it that will allow you to file a claim for business interruption and maybe your insurance can pay for your business losses? It's unlikely because when there were other pandemics in the past, like the SARS, the insurance companies realized that they don't want to have to pay in the future, so they removed that from policies. So now you can say that because of COVID-19, which is an emergency, it's causing you business loss and they should pay it. But it's worth for you to look at your insurance policy anyway and see what you can get there. And, keep an eye out for any developments in the insurance area because it's developing. Also talk to the utility companies to see if you can get a payment plan. And like Izzy said earlier, there's a moratorium that applies for utilities as well, so you get a break from that. Next, you should also reassess all the expenses that you don't need now. So maybe you don't need to acquire so much inventory, or what can you do with the inventory that you currently have? Look at any subscriptions that you have for software, apps, magazines, anything that you have subscriptions that maybe you don't need right now, or cell phone plans that you need to cancel or suspend. And I'm sure you're already doing this and know this, but it's worth mentioning. And then finally, think about how much sales you need to make to cover you for the next 2 to 3 months, right? So what are your fixed expenses, your rent, your utilities, your basic working capital expenses you have, and then how many sales you need to cover that. And so hopefully that will help you figure out if you need to apply for financial assistance, take out more loans, get a line of credit, or maybe you need to shut down the business and apply for unemployment, and among all the other options that we've discussed today. So that's just some housekeeping about how to assess your business situation. And now I'm going to give you information about the financial relief program. So first, you may ask yourself, should I apply for a business loan or a grant? So that, first of all, is a decision for the governing body of your organization. If you are a nonprofit leader, or if you are an LLC member, or maybe you're in a partnership, your board or whoever is managing the business together, they should make that decision and talk to a certified accountant or your bookkeeper, right, to make sure that you're making the right decision and that you really need to be, getting loans and applying for financial assistance. And any decisions and discussions that are made, make sure to document those. So I'm going to give you a general overview of the programs that exist or existed, because most of them have been, exhausted. So you have federal programs, right? You have state programs, and then you have other programs from the stimulus, from other tax credits, etc., right, from the stimulus package. And then you also have private financing that you can access, like through other sources, right? So we're going to start with the federal. So the federal programs have been that we've heard about are the Paycheck Protection Program and the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, known as the EIDL. Those are the relief programs that are administered by the Small Business Administration. The Small Business Administration is the federal agency that is in charge of providing counseling and advice to small businesses in the nation, right? They also provide relief, loans, government contracts at the federal level. That's what they do. So that's why they have these two programs that, during the COVID-19 crisis. So unfortunately, because of the high demand, because there are millions of businesses out there, small businesses that have applied for this money, and there's so little money. So it already ran out, even though the deadlines for applying to these two programs still not expired yet, right? But, maybe Congress is going to do something and the programs are going to get replenished. So we can go over the key differences between these two programs, just in case it gets replenished and you want to be ready to apply. And for those of you who have already received these funds, you may want to know some key differences just in case you were not aware. Because remember, even if you got approved for your loan and then now you realize, oh wow, I should have not gotten that loan, or I'm not going to be able to repay that loan, or you change your mind, you can always reject it, right? So we'll go over that.
Andrea, I just want to mention here that I don't know if you've seen this or not. I feel like the news comes like a rapid fire missile every single day. Right, like an hour before we started, I looked at the news and saw that Congress has reached a deal now on replenishing the EIDL and the PPP. It's not actually been voted on, but it's assumed that it will be voted on. All the agreements have been made. Trump said he's going to sign it, so on and so forth. So it seems like everything's going to be replenished in the next couple days.
Excellent. So, and thank you. That's a good point. You need to be checking. I think like two good places where you can always be checking for updates and like fact sheets and Q&A, all that is the Small Business Administration website, the federal, and then also the New York City equivalent, which is the Small Business Services, because they always have updated information. And like you said, things change all the time. So whatever I'm saying today may change by tomorrow. So just keep checking, okay? I'm going to talk about the key differences between those two programs in just a minute. But I first want to continue giving you like the big picture of how these, are what these are. So we had the federal programs, right, that are going to get replenished. Great. Then we have city programs of the City of New York. That's administered by the Small Business Services, right? It's basically the same thing as a small business administration, but at the local level. And they can help with so many things, like helping you get job placement for your business. They can help you with contracts. They can help you applying for loans, and they can help you how to grow your business, etc. So definitely check that site. They give you a lot of advice, financial counseling, etc. So they had a couple of programs. They had a grant, right? That was for up to $27,000, and that was free money. It was going to be to keep your employees if you had up to 4 employees. Over, no more money, unfortunately. And then they had another program, the continuity loan, which was a loan for up to $75,000. Maybe some of you got that money already. That's great, but unfortunately, nobody can apply for that anymore. So, so right now, basically, all you have left, government-wise, is these federal loan programs and maybe other federal incentives from the CARES Act that I will talk about in a minute. So let's see. Let me go over the key differences between the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program, and the EIDL. And I'm gonna look at my my notes because there's so many little details. But I'm gonna make it fast. Okay, so you should know that the goal of these two programs is to basically make businesses keep the employees, so that then you don't have a lot of people going on unemployment, right? So they want to make sure you keep employees. And also the benefit of keeping your employees is that when this is over, hopefully you're not going to be starting from zero. You still have something, you kept your business going, right? So that's the goal. So you should consider, first of all, if you're eligible for these programs, if these programs meet your business goals, what do you want to use the money for? Because these programs have specific requirements, rules of what you can use the money for. So you have to check that, because if you want to use your money to like relocate or expand your restaurant or something, then this is definitely not for you. You could be penalized for that, and they could make you pay the money back. So there's that. So let's get started. Key differences: loan amount. The Paycheck Protection Program, that is for mostly to keep payroll. 75% of the money that they give you, you have to use to pay employees and payroll costs, right? And that loan they're going to give you 2.5 months of your average monthly payroll expenses, up to $10 million. On the other hand, the EIDL, right? That one is up to $2 million. But that one it's based on economic injury, and that one they give you up to a $10,000 grant. So whatever you ask for, 10,000 of that will be free. Even if they deny you that loan, and they advance you the $10,000, you get to keep the $10,000. That one you can use for working capital. So you can use that for payroll, you can use that for your rent and all those things. It's just that you cannot use those two monies from those two different loans for the same purposes. You have to use them at separate times. And we can talk about that during the question answer section. Long term, the PPP one is up to 10 years, but the SBA has said that you're really going to have 2 years to pay it off, but the statute really allows up to 10 years term to pay it. And then the EIDL, it can be up to 30 years. Who is an eligible borrower? All the small business operations for the PPP under 500 employees, right? There are some affiliation rules for, businesses that have partners or that are larger. Nonprofit organizations can also apply, but certain nonprofit organizations, only those who are public charities. So if you're like a trade association, you will not qualify for this, for the PPP. But you could qualify for the EIDL because that one has less requirements than the PPP. Then the application process. This one was kind of confusing in the beginning. So the PPP, you have to apply with a bank or a financial institution. Now, non-banks have also been approved to be issuing these loans. So even though the federal government is backing up the loans, the private banks are going to issue the loans with their own money, right? And their own underwriting methods and forms, except for that they have to follow government rules. So I suggest that you go with the bank that you usually do your business with, because I've seen that they are prioritizing their customers because they already have their information. So why would they take a new person when they already have their own clients they want to benefit? So that's something to keep in mind. Another thing to keep in mind is go with the little banks, maybe your local bank, your local credit union, because maybe not everybody knows about them, and they may, they could maybe like give you a loan faster, right? So think about that versus the EIDL, right? The other one, where that one's directly with the federal government. The federal government people, they're going to, you apply with in their website, and they will reach out to you whether they accepted you or not, or they will ask you for additional documentation, etc. So one is with the lenders you have to go to, the other one is with the federal government. Next, collateral. Collateral is when you're borrowing money. Sometimes the person that lends you the money, they want to have a security, right, in case you can't pay. So for the PPP, there's no collateral. For the EIDL, the other one, there's collateral if you borrow more than $25,000, and even then they're starting to waive that if you can show that you can pay them back. Personal guarantee. The PPP does not have a personal guarantee, so you as an owner, you don't have to, give guarantee for the business that has to pay that back. But for the EIDL, the other one, you don't have to give a personal guarantee as long as you borrow less than $200,000. If you borrow more than $200,000, then the owners of the business that own 20% or more of the business, then they may have to give a personal guarantee. I'm almost done with these key differences.
Andrea, I just want to ask a clarifying question, or actually maybe I can just chime in here for a second on a personal guarantee. If that's something that's applied to nowadays specifically, and something that as my partner Eamon and I have gone through these processes that we've been really conscious of, just so everybody who's listening really understands what a personal guarantee is. That basically is you saying as an individual that if the business goes bankrupt and can't pay back the funds, that the lender can come after you as an individual. So if you own a home or whatever, if you own any assets, that lender can come after you individually and say, well, your business couldn't pay me back, now you owe me money. And as Eamon and I were, or as Eamon and I have been applying for these loans, that's been something that we've been really conscious of, because that's a really big deal, to say that we're going to take responsibility, especially in a time like now. Like, who knows if nowadays we'll survive or not? We really hope that it will. We're certainly going to do everything that we can. But at the end of the day, this situation is unprecedented. And if the business goes bankrupt, it would be an additional tragedy if we lost everything that we had, because now the federal government or a bank could come after us. So if you're out there and you're thinking about this and you've never had to really enter the world of loans and personal guarantees before, just be really conscious of what you're signing for. And if you can get somebody to counsel you on whether or not there is a personal guarantee on the loan you're about to sign, I would highly recommend that you do that. And actually, Andrea, do you guys offer that service for businesses to review the terms of these loans?
We haven't done that yet because we're also learning about it. I'm happy to talk to people about their loans and understanding the programs, but we also have partners in the city that are specialized in loans. For instance, there's a nonprofit called Start Small, Think Big. That's their name. You can look them up on the website, because you could probably apply to get free financial assistance, and they can help you apply for the loans and make assessments as to should I apply for this or not, right? They have that accounting assistance and legal assistance as well, with private law firms that are very experienced in this kind of transactions. So check them out. Start Small, Think Big.
That's great. Thank you.
And check the local chamber of commerce, because they may also be providing assistance, and also the small business services. They may also connect you to accounting and legal assistance. Yeah. Right. If you have a bookkeeper, CPA, absolutely talk to them.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. And just a few more key differences between these two main programs. The interest, it's 1%, right, for the PPP, even though the statute says that it could be up to 4%, but SBA has said it's going to be 1%. And then for the EIDL, for businesses is 3.75%, and for nonprofits is 2.75% fixed interest. Next is the, by the way, the interest accrues from the moment that they grant you the loan. So we're going to talk about forgiveness of one of them. So even though one of them the PPP will be forgiven, if you meet the requirements, it will be accruing the interest. And so if you don't get forgiven, then you're going to have to pay those. So speaking of forgiveness, the SBA will give you 8 weeks of the loan. You have to use the money during 8 weeks after they make your first disbursement, right? You have to use 75% of the money of the PPP for payroll costs, which includes salaries, wages, benefits, healthcare. You could look at the final rules from the SBA, and it will give you a detailed list of what payroll includes, right? So you have to use 75% for that, and then the other 25% left you can use to pay rent, interest in mortgages, interest, not the mortgage itself, the interest. Any other basic working capital needs that you have, you can use 25% of that for that. And so if you can show at the end of the 8 weeks, you have to apply to the lender, you have to apply for forgiveness, and then you're going to have to keep track of all of your expenses because they're going to want to see that you comply with those rules, right? If you don't have an accountant or a bookkeeping system, you could probably look up some apps online, like Mint. I think it's owned by TurboTax. I'm not sponsoring any of this, but you can look up for those apps online that can help you do bookkeeping on your own. If you don't have a bank account, you'll have to get one if you're going to apply. So keep track of your bank statements, of what you're paying to your employees and all that, because you will definitely need that to get the forgiveness. And if you, for instance, you have to keep the payroll levels the same as the equivalent pay period from the prior year that you're using. So they want to see that you're keeping the same average number of employees and pay rate. So if you cut their wages more than 25%, they will cut the forgiveness in that amount, because the goal is to keep people in the payroll making the same that they made before. If you already let people go, furloughed or laid them off, it's okay, because you can, as long as you rehire them by June 30th, then they can consider you again for the forgiveness of those costs. The EIDL doesn't have forgiveness, that's a loan. Except for that $10,000 out of the total, you have to ask in your application to get an advance of $10,000, which is a grant, it's free money. So even if they deny you that EIDL loan, you get to keep the $10,000. Now, it's up to $10,000. Initially, we thought everybody's going to get $10,000. No. I saw rumors that, and Justin, maybe you can confirm this, like that they would give you $1,000 per employee, up to $10,000. That's what different states have said.
We had a friend, all I have is an anecdote here. I can tell you that we received the full $10,000. We applied for a lot more than that. And we also applied on the very first day that it was open. And so I think the rules kind of shifted in the middle of this. But we had somebody email us today and tell us that they applied and that they only got $1,000 per employee. So they have 2 employees and they only got $2,000.
Yeah, so definitely PPP, has more potential because you can get more, has more restrictions, right? Because it may not be forgivable. At the same time, it has lower interest rate than the EIDL. So definitely you have to consider these differences with your partners, with your accountant, with your lawyer, okay? And then, that's it. That's the key differences. So now, what you may be asking yourself, what should I do? Well, no, because you just gave us a great news that it's going to be replenished. I was going to say, now that it's gone, what should I do? But hey, maybe what should you do if you don't qualify? if that's too much for you or you don't qualify for any of those, right? Then you may want to consider, even if you do qualify, you may want to consider other programs from the stimulus, right? What are those? The employee retention tax credit. So that is where you as an employer pay payroll taxes, right? So they will give you 50% credit they will give you 50% credit of the wages that you paid your employee up to $10,000, right? So that may be a good way to get half of the payroll taxes back you get.
Sorry,
for this
there
year.
was just a glitch there.
You get
Can
that,
you
you
repeat
can get
that again?
PPP.
There was just a glitch when you were summarizing the payroll tax credit. Can you just repeat that one more time?
Yeah. So there's a program. It's called the Employee Retention Tax Credit. So here is where you can get benefit from a tax credit. The credit will be equal to 50% of wages paid to each employee, subject to a maximum per employee tax credit of $5,000. To be eligible, you must have been operating during 2020 and either have operations fully or partially suspended due to the government orders in response of COVID, or have a reduction in revenue of at least 50%, which is measured by comparing the applicable calendar quarter to the same quarter of 2019. So the credit is available for wages paid or incurred from March 13th, 2020 through December 31st, 2020. So that's basically you pay 100% payroll taxes, they'll just give you 50% back, up to $10,000 per employee. So that's pretty good. That's probably better than the IDL for some people. Another program that you should consider is the employers now, they can delay payment of their share of payroll taxes, otherwise due for wages paid during 2020. But then you'll have to pay. So half of the payroll taxes that you're deferring the payment, you can pay that. They're due by December 31st of 2021. So it's a year and more, right? And then the other half that you will owe, that you deferred, you have to pay by December 31st, 2022. So you can either you're gonna get half off of what you pay for the employee up to $10,000, and you can defer your payments for like up to 2 years. Okay. Finally, for nonprofits, if you've been doing business activities that are not related to your nonprofit, right? And making money out of that, that's called unrelated business income. You now may be able to use, and you had losses, you didn't make any money from those businesses, you can use those losses to offset taxable income, regardless of the existing 80% limit that the government has. But you can carry them back up to 5 years and also forward. So this is kind of complicated. I don't really understand this very well, but you should look it up. Basically, if you had net operating losses, you can go back to, I think, 2017, or I think so, and then see if you had losses, then say, I had losses in those years, give me credit for the taxes that I paid 5 years before, and maybe forward. So that's another way for you to get some credit for money that you lost in the past that you need now.
Right, so basically the IRS would then send you a check it would be as if you took losses in previous years and you were able to apply them to years before that, and retroactively you would get a tax refund for those losses.
Yes.
Right, okay.
And I think the Trump tax code had changed that you couldn't deduct more than 80% or something like that. There were some rules where he change it up where you cannot apply the losses to the past, but because of the crisis, that has been lifted. But I don't know those details, and I don't want to tell you wrong information, but
right.
you should just know that that's another way of getting some kind of tax incentive.
It sounds like a good thing to talk to an accountant about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Then a few more things about I don't qualify for PPP or EIDL, or I don't want to do those. What else? What else is out there? You can find financial support from like larger businesses like Facebook. They have a Facebook Small Business Grants. I don't know if that's still available.
The applications got sent out for New York City, I think 2 days ago. I signed up for the emails, and then we got an email from them 1 or 2 days ago. We applied for those, and I was just emailing with my partner today, and he told me that I believe that $3,000 is the cash that they would give you, and then there'd be $1,500 in ad credits. One thing that I will caution about in that is that one of the terms is that they can use you for marketing purposes. It's unclear exactly how, and we only really figured this out after the fact, and it's a bitter pill that I'm probably just going to have to swallow. But I think what it means is that if we get this money, that Facebook could then use nowadays and our logo on their own promotions. So just be conscious of that if you apply for the assistance from Facebook, and just figure out. I mean, these are hard times. $3,000 could probably come in handy for a lot of people right now who have a small business, and maybe you just want to do that, or maybe you don't mind. But just be conscious that Facebook does have the right then to use your brand, and this is part of their story.
Great. It seems like you guys are on top of it. Model business owners.
We're doing everything we can. We're doing everything we can.
Yeah, and so like that Facebook one, there's also Salesforce Care Small Business Grant. It's up to $10,000. I think the applications opened up recently this week. So check out for Salesforce. And then there are others. You can Google that. And then, of course, there's two more final options. You have the crowdfunding. So a lot of people that can't qualify for anything. They're doing crowdfunding, GoFundMe. They're doing all those sites and then raising money to support their employees or for their own business. So that you have to consult with your accountant and with your lawyer, because there are going to be probably some tax consequences for that. If you're a non-for-profit, you have to be very careful, because the IRS has guidelines as to how a non-profit raises money and uses it, right? But that's definitely an option. Then finally, the option that everybody has all the time, which is going to your local bank and see what products they have. Maybe get a line of credit or something like that. Try to use local credit unions. I guess just because the big banks are really busy right now with the other applications, so maybe it's likely that you will hear back from the local credit unions, like I said before.
Yeah,
and of course,
again, to add on to this, sorry, Andrea, but so many things you're saying are like things that we have direct experience with, and I feel like I can offer a little bit of additional info here. In our case, we applied for the PPP on the day that it was made available, or actually the day after it was made available, because we couldn't find a bank that would accept us on the day, because the bank that we do business with did not affirm to us that they were participating and administering the PPP loan until almost a week afterwards. We went to a local credit union called Brooklyn Co-op, who we'd gotten a loan from in the early days of Nowadays, and they got us set up, and we actually heard back from them first. They told us how much money we could get through them. For whatever reason, they were limiting the amount of funds. We weren't able to get as much through them as we would have been able to get through TD Bank, but we did hear back from them first. So, and they're a local bank, and it's a little bit more complicated to deal with them in terms of paperwork than it is to deal with your primary bank. So, if you have a good relationship with a bank that is a larger bank, I would recommend going through them. But if you're having a hard time getting in touch and you don't know where to go, Brooklyn Co-op is a local bank that is still participating in this, and I would recommend going to them.
Great. I think there's another credit union in Manhattan the Lower East Side People's Credit Union, I don't know if they're issuing loans anymore. Even on, actually, I was going to say this before, even though they're done, right, they're not accepting more applications, you should still try to check. I know they're going to get replenished, but who knows when, but you should still try to fill out your application and do your bookkeeping, fill out the application and try to reach out to your bank anyway, because maybe, who knows, maybe they have an opening there and they can take your application. Yeah, so I think that's it for the financial assistance. There's other things I wanted to say, but I feel like we're running out of time. So just to finish, and we can get to the questions, right? If there are any, I'm just going to talk about briefly about how to deal with the landlord, the commercial landlord. So a lot of the things that Izzy said about the moratorium for the residential tenants is identical for the commercial. They're not going to evict you right now. If they try to lock you out, call the police. That's an emergency, right? So that will be heard in a court. If your landlord is discriminating against you, also contact the New York the Commission on Human Rights and report that. They have a form online for you to report this harassment and discrimination. Or call our hotline if you want to get an assessment of your situation. Yeah, like Izzy said, you will owe the money, even if you don't have to pay it now, because they can't evict you, you will owe it. And we know commercial tenants rent's usually pretty high, right? And you're not living there, so it's a big deal. So what you want to negotiate with your landlord, what are the things that you should take into account? Review your lease. So check for any provisions that excuse the non-payment of rent. For instance, there's a clause called force majeure. This is a clause that basically excuses performance. However, it's probably not going to help you that much because it usually is used by landlords that are saying, we are not going to perform because of the force majeure. So you want to argue against that. If you need services for your business and the landlord is saying, oh, COVID-19, I can't do the services, it's force majeure. No, then you can ask them to perform because depending on what the clause says exactly, it's very, it's read very, whatever is in the paper is what it is. So if COVID-19, the word is not in there, you can say that that situation doesn't apply. But anyway, it's unlikely that you can use that clause for yourself for no payment of rent. But check your contract anyway, because there may be other clauses about impossibility or other things that allow you to not pay the rent or renegotiate it. Let's see what you can do there. Then you want to check again if you have business interruption insurance. It may cover you. But it's like COVID-19 is likely excluded. Then think about what are the consequences of not paying your commercial rent. So maybe a rent default in your contract will deprive you from the benefits of extending your lease. Maybe you have negotiated that if you always pay on time, you're going to get some kind of discount or you're going to get to renew your lease, etc., right? Or maybe there are fees, the penalties that are going to be charged to you if you're defaulting your rent. So take that into account. If you can renew your rent, if you're in a position where you are about to renew the rent, maybe you want to consider being month to month and negotiate that with the landlord. So that's something. Then talk to your landlord, try to negotiate a rent adjustment schedule. You can ask for maybe complete abatement of the rent, which is unlikely, or you can ask for a partial deferment of the rent. So you can say maybe I pay 50% now, and then I'll pay you the other 50% starting next year. Really, just be aggressive. You know your landlord the best. You know how to deal with your landlord. So everything is on the table. You can renegotiate the terms of your lease. You're not prohibited from doing that. So just try know your business well and know what is the least that you can do. Don't be starting your offer with an amount that you can't pay. So be very conscious of what's your bottom line when you negotiate.
I also would like to add here, Andrea, that I just spoke to a commercial broker today, this afternoon.
What did they say?
And one of the things that I wanted to understand for the time that we have a negotiation with our landlord is, what does the market look like right now? And I think that Izzy, it'd be interesting to hear from you on this, because maybe this is also applicable here for residential. But as for commercial spaces, one of the things we were thinking about was, okay, well, can we sublease to somebody right now? And as we were thinking about subleasing, we wanted to understand, well, what is the market like? Like, will anyone rent our space if we put it out there? What kind of terms do we need to offer for that? And the commercial broker told me it's dead. That he's got one deal that he's really hoping to push through, and that otherwise, because you can't really walk somebody through a space to show it to them right now, and because of the uncertainty of business right now, it's really difficult to make a deal. And so one of the things that we're thinking about as we enter into negotiation with our landlord is, okay, who is he going to replace us with if we leave? And knowing that the market has just been destroyed at this moment in time, and who knows what it'll be like on the other side of this, that gives us some kind of knowledge that he probably is not going to want us to leave. And I'm sorry, I feel like I keep jumping in on your thing here, but
No, I love that, because you have the actual experience from being a business.
Right. Yeah. Well, so
your experiences.
It would be good. Maybe this is the first question that we can go to in the larger Q&A for you, Izzy, when we talk about to talk about residential, and if there is a process for renegotiation with a landlord during this time, and how the market for residential at this moment bears on those potential negotiations. But anyway, I go back to you, Andrea, so you can finish your talk.
Those are great points. When you're negotiating, know how much you can pay, what's your reality. Like you said, if you've been a good tenant and you've been paying on time, maybe bring that up. I've always paid you on time, and bring up the crisis. The market is dead. You know it. You're not going to get somebody else. So, let's figure something out. It's to your advantage. And maybe if you are applying for these programs, maybe you can let them know so that they can defer your rent payments in a little bit while you can get your money. You can negotiate all of those things. Yes, totally. Also, keep in mind that I'm not sure about this, but I think landlords may qualify for like EIDL money, maybe PPP. There's some weird restrictions for owners of rental property or people that have management companies that they can't get these monies, but in some instances they can. So you know what? Maybe because they're expecting you to go apply for that money, but maybe they can also apply themselves. So they should know that. But if they can't and you can, then that's another thing that you have leverage, right? They're not going to get somebody out there. And if you can qualify for these financial programs, maybe they can even help you apply. Maybe they can help you with their accounting or something. Maybe they can give you a discount on your rent because you are getting money that's going to go to them, because remember, a percentage of some of these programs you can use for rent payments. So, try to work together, if possible. Then, any kind of modifications that you make to your lease about rent, or maybe other terms that you want to renegotiate, maybe this is the opportunity to renegotiate. Document them in writing, please, or email maybe, if you can do it in a formal writing. And then 2 more things, and then we're done with this. Breaking your lease. Hopefully that never is your case. But if you need to break your lease, maybe look at your contract. Some commercial contracts have something called the good guy guarantee, which is basically a clause that allows you to break your lease before it ends, as long as you provide proper notification to the landlord. Sometimes you have to have been like a good tenant that pays on time. Like, depends, each lease is different. So check that and see what are the requirements for breaking the lease early. You may be able to get out. Some good guy guarantees are for 3 months. So maybe you pay for 3 months and then you give notice on time and then you leave. But hopefully that's like the last resort. And if you are in the event that you're just now getting a lease, you just got into a lease, right? Maybe because you're brand new and they know they're not going to get anybody else, maybe you can reopen negotiations and see if they can give you more rent concessions. You know how you can in the beginning say in commercial leases the first 3 months are going to be free rent because I'm like building out the space. So maybe they can give you, maybe you just build it out, but this COVID happened, so maybe say give me another 3 months free rent, and then in 3 months we can begin, or maybe negotiate the starting of the lease, move it, right, or extending the term. So maybe right now you don't charge me, but then my lease will last longer, and then I'll pay you then. Maybe you can charge me a little more money down the road in exchange for giving me a break now. All kinds of ideas that you should discuss with your attorney, your accountant, your partners, and your landlord. Yes, I think that's all I have.
Okay, thank you very, very much for going through that. That was really helpful for me. I hope it was helpful for some folks on the stream as well. I'm going to unmute everybody, and Izzy, I'm going to jump to you for this next question. Do any of the things that we were talking about renegotiating a lease with a landlord, and what the market looks like, certainly for rentals right now, I imagine, I've been thinking a lot about, what do you do if you have to move at this point? I imagine it's really difficult to go and find an apartment right now, and probably really difficult for a landlord to find a residential tenant right now. So is that something that somebody could use as leverage in a negotiation with their landlord, perhaps to renegotiate a lease at this moment?
So I'll start before getting to that specific question with a little bit about a protection that a lot of New York tenants are protected by, which is rent stabilization, right? If you live in a building that's 6 or more units, built before 1974, and a bunch of other things, your building is more likely than not, it's rent stabilized. If you're unsure if you are a rent stabilized tenant, the Rent Guidelines Board does have a publication you can Google to look up your building, or you can call our hotline and you can help you find that out as well. But in rent stabilized apartments, number one, if you end up for some reason right now not in your apartment, you can't pay your rent, you are allowed to ask your landlord permission to sublet your apartment, and they cannot refuse a sublet for unreasonable reasons. So I would argue that in this situation, if you're in a position where you're going somewhere else to save on costs, and you can find somebody to sublet and take over your unit, that might be an option that's on the table to help make up for this period of time where you might be building up arrears that you can't afford. If you end up and also rent stabilized apartments, your rent is set by the Rent Guidelines Board. So that means that you can't, your landlord can't bind you into a higher rent on the back end of any agreement that you might reach during this period of time. You can agree to a payment plan, and that's something that might be brought up in a housing court proceeding later on if you end up in that situation. But on its own, it can't evict you. Your landlord would still have to go through the formal channels to commence formal eviction proceedings. If you are in a 1 to 2 family home, or a smaller apartment, or a smaller building that's less than 6 units, or an apartment that's not governed by rent stabilization law or other kinds of protections, the state of the market is a really good place to start. Very much like what Andrea was saying about the commercial context, making arguments to your landlord if you're engaging in some kind of renegotiation or trying to figure out a plan that works for you, being able to lead with, well, there are not too many other tenants out there that could replace me at this time, is a really good place to start. So getting that's a really good way to get your landlord to come to the table in a "we're all in this together at this moment" attitude. instead of trying to, be combative, which I know a lot of landlords are. And again, if your landlord's not amenable to a conversation, like I said, mediation or calling our hotline could be a really good avenue to get that started. If you do end up reaching an agreement with your landlord, like all communications, make sure to have that in writing. There are a lot of different protections that you can't accidentally sign yourself away from, but also you're going to want to have something to prove that you did come to an agreement if something is clear. And just to talk a little bit, I know that this came up briefly, if you end up in a situation where you have to break your lease, much like in the commercial context, your landlord does have a duty to, for the most part, most landlords have a duty to mitigate. So they wouldn't be able to just later on say, well, the whole year went by and I didn't have a tenant. They still have a duty to try on their own to find some way to make up for that loss of rental income by getting a new tenant or some other thing. A good way to, if you are in a position where you have to break your lease, finding a replacement tenant on your own would be a good option to start. One thing to bear in mind in this context, and I know that you keep saying that these are difficult conversations, especially when your housing is at stake. People get a little bit, it's a little different conversation for the place where you're living, is to just, we are really in this together. Like everyone, to hopefully take comfort in the fact that you're not the only person going through this right now. We all are collectively trying to find solutions, giving each other advice. Maybe something that a friend tried could help. Obviously, legal services organizations like us, we're definitely available to talk through any strategy that you might want to as an individual, but also, reach out to other people and see if they've been able to negotiate something that works for them. See if you can replicate that and pass that information around.
Okay, great. Can you one more time give the phone number for legal services?
Yes, so you can reach our access line at 917-661-4500.
Okay, great. Thank you. And just for anybody who didn't join us at the top of this program, we are making a Google document that we're going to post in the chat room. It will be posted on our Patreon page, and it will be posted on a YouTube post that we're going to put up. We don't want anybody to have to go through the paywall of Patreon to be able to access any of the things we've been talking about tonight. So we're going to have this video entirely up on YouTube, and the Google document will be in the text just below the viewing screen, and you'll be able to access all the phone numbers and links that have been mentioned throughout this call. We're almost at 10 o'clock now, but we've gotten clearance to go a little bit longer. If you guys are willing to do that, I don't want to hold you here. You've already given us a lot of your time, but Nicole, Andrea, Izzy, if you're willing to stay and answer one or two more questions, we would love to have you. Okay. All right. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. Let's see. I'm going to go to, let's see. I'm going to go to a couple of questions that we had come in via email that I think might be helpful to a lot of people here. Give me 1 second. Excuse me.
And while you're doing that, I think I can actually share my screen for a second.
Okay, great.
And give you guys that information for the hotline I've been
great.
talking about.
That's great. It's another housing question that we got in the chat room. Do you have any general advice for any residents whose lease is going to be up during this time? I mean, I guess this kind of goes back to understanding that you have some leverage in the market right now. But do you have any other thoughts for somebody whose lease is coming up, in the next month or two?
So at the moment, can you guys hear me?
Yep, we hear you just fine.
So at the moment, there are no evictions. So if your lease is up and you're still in your apartment, the landlord cannot commence a proceeding to evict you for non-payment of rent or for a holdover. A holdover is when you're in your apartment for other reasons other than non-payment of rent and you're not supposed to be there, or you're doing something that violates your lease, the landlord might bring a proceeding. No housing court proceedings for eviction can be commenced at the moment. So if you find yourself in a position where you need to stay in your apartment for longer than your lease term because your lease is expiring during this period of time, I would, evaluate what makes sense for you, of course, as an individual. But if you're deciding to stay in your apartment, your landlord can't commence eviction proceedings against you at this time. Now, you would still be responsible for use and occupancy, which would be determined more likely than not by the amount that you were supposed to pay in rent at the time, which your landlord could, after this moratorium is lifted, commence a housing court proceeding against you for that. So I would definitely continue, if it's an option for you, continue to pay rent. Now, this only applies for folks that are not rent-stabilized tenants. If you are a rent-stabilized tenant, you're entitled to a renewal lease. So whether your landlord likes it or not, they're still supposed to offer you a renewal lease at the end of the expiration of a rental term. So that means that at this time, you're still a tenant in that space. There's nothing that would have changed in your tenancy, and you're supposed to follow the law in determining how much your rent can increase. At this time, like I said, no non-payment, no holdover, proceedings for eviction can be commenced.
Okay, great.
I would like to add a couple of things to that. If you are not rent stabilized, right, you don't have secured lease, you're not rent stabilized, maybe you could try, and it's ending, maybe you could negotiate with your landlord to go month to month, maybe with the option to renegotiate a longer term after like 3 months or whatever, that's an idea. Because that way you kind of keep the lease, but it's only month to month. So if your income changes in a month from now, you're free to leave that place, right? And also renegotiate the rent amount, right? Maybe you could do it cheaper in the beginning and go up later, whatever. That's an option. If you are rent stabilized, I think that because you don't want, that's very valuable in the city, right? So maybe you may want to negotiate a rent preference. So maybe they can give you preferential rent, which is lower than the market value of the legal rent. And then the lucky thing for you is that with the new rent laws, that will become your lifetime rent. So any increases will be based on that preference. So, the landlord may not want to do that, but also, it's a way for the landlord to secure you and to get some money. So, yeah.
Nicole, I have a question that's come in, or this is kind of a combination of a few questions that came into us that were about seemingly technical issues with filing for unemployment. There was one person who said, this is one of our employees, who said that there was no record of his application in the system when he called in, even though he applied at the beginning of the mandated closures. Another one of our employees has had basic issues with his username, and then somebody who emailed in to us said that their account had been locked. And I wonder if you know about a good way to contact unemployment about these technical issues that are keeping people from being able to get even to the part where they get to make a claim.
Yeah, I think in all three of those cases, the best thing they can do is they're going to have to talk to somebody from the Department of Labor. There's no way I think they can do it by email or by secure message. I mean, they can try sending a secure message if they can get on the New York State Government ID site, which is the main way that folks traditionally are able to communicate with the Department of Labor. I think now, during this time of crisis, I think really the only way is to get on the phone. And how do you do that? Because nobody can reach them. So again, unfortunately, what we're hearing anecdotally is the best way to reach the Department of Labor is either to go on their Twitter, New York State Department of Labor Twitter account, and direct message them or tweet on the account, and people do get responses that way. Another way is to call Governor Cuomo's office. There is a way to go on Governor Cuomo's site and to call, and it may take a while to get through. You may be put on hold for a while, but I think if you get through, eventually you will speak to somebody from the governor's office, and they do have a way to get through to the Department of Labor that traditionally other folks are having trouble. And then the third way I was going to say, just one more time, is if you can contact your local state assembly member or state senator and or congressperson, because those folks often have another way to get through to the Department of Labor.
Right. I can tell you that one of our employees called the governor's office, was put on hold for 3 hours, but eventually did get connected to the Department of Labor and was able to speak to somebody finally in unemployment. So I, again, have some anecdotal evidence that was an effective way to get through, even though waiting on hold for 3 hours is very painful. But this person also told me that they had called for hours and hours and hours a day for weeks. And so I think by the time they waited for 3 hours and got on hold, they were actually quite excited.
Yeah. I mean, I would say if people are actually getting denials of unemployment, like where you think there's something that's just not right, and it's not a technical issue, unfortunately, I don't think we have any better way to handle that. Mm-hmm. But if you're getting denied unemployment or you have any question about eligibility, that's when I would say reach out to legal services and see if you can talk to one of the advocates about what's happening. Right. Because maybe something that's happening that we can help you with in that way.
Okay, great. There are a couple of questions that have come in on the chat room that I think are quite simple questions. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the questions and then give what I think is the correct one-word answer or very short answer. And just if I can get an affirmation that I'm correct from you guys, that would be really great. If you have been approved for unemployment benefit and have been claiming benefits, but you are still waiting for your first payment, do you get all multiple weeks worth of claims at once? I believe the answer to that question is yes. When you finally do get your payment, that you get everything at once. Can you confirm that that's correct?
Generally, it's true. They may come, if it's a lot of weeks, it may come a few days and then a few days later, but generally you'll get it in a short period of time. So the answer is yes.
Right. Okay. Another person asks, I've lost my job, but could theoretically continue paying rent with my savings. Am I obligated to pay the full rent? Izzy, this is something you addressed at the beginning. Everyone is obligated to pay their rent under the terms of their lease, but then there becomes an individual decision that you have to make on whether you should hold back your savings for future survival, frankly, and that's not something that you guys can exactly advise on. Am I correct in saying that, Izzy?
That's correct.
Okay, great. Someone asked the question, this is for you, Nicole, what if you work and only make $60 a day? I'm not sure. Like, I think that's a question about like.
So yeah. I think that's a question about partial unemployment, as I kind of alluded to in the original presentation. We have the worst system in the entire country in terms of partial unemployment. So it isn't based on how much you're earning. Even if you're working for a few hours a day, if you're working more than 3 days, if you're working 4 or more days a week, you get no unemployment, even if you're earning $60 a day, which sucks and is outrageous. But unfortunately, that is the state of our unemployment law in New York State, and something that people should be mindful of when they think about how things might change someday.
Right.
That's all I'm going to say.
Great. And then let's see. The last question from the chat room. Someone who works 4 days a week but still makes less than $504 a week. I believe that's similar to what you were just saying.
Yeah, so there's any way to push your employment into less than 4 days. That is what I recommend, because if you can do that, you get some unemployment plus you get that $600. You get the full $600. A little bit of unemployment gets you that full $600 until the end of July. So it's a big deal to be able to do that.
Right. Okay, great. There was someone, I just want to address this in case this person is listening. there was someone who emailed us with a very specific and pretty. It was just a really sad story about them being let go from a job. Sounds like pretty unceremoniously a couple weeks before this all started, and um, and what to do now. And I just wanted to let you know, if you are listening right now, that you should definitely call these folks at Legal Services and speak with them about this. And Nicole, maybe you just wanted to very quickly. I think you said something that was unfortunately
Yeah.
not too hopeful about the amount of time that this is taking and
Right.
what's happening
So
with
I want
hearings.
to both be hopeful and not hopeful at the same time.
Yes.
So what I will say is that that person, I think, asked for a hearing, and many people win their hearing. So I want to give some hope to that person, that if that person gets to a hearing, there is a decent chance actually that they might be able to win. We would review your case. We would advise you. I can't say whether or not you would win, but I know that when we take cases, we win 90% of the hearings that we do. That's how many mistakes the Department of Labor makes. So, and it's not just that we're great, we're really good advocates, but it also is because the Department of Labor makes a lot of mistakes. And so going through to these hearings, and you can win them. What I will say, and here's the bad news, is that unfortunately the Department of Labor, the Unemployment Insurance Appeal Board, is not having any of their hearings happening right now. They're completely closed down. We've been having lots of conversations with them. We talked with them today. They would like to open up. They're going to have to be able to do it by phone, and they have very antiquated systems. They have huge backlogs. But if you reach out to us, there might be something we can do. So do reach out to us, and let's see what we can do to maybe help you with that hearing, and then just to give you the hope that maybe eventually, it may take a really long time, but hopefully, as long as you're certifying for your benefits, and that's the other thing I want people to do, continue to certify for your benefits. Even if you've been denied unemployment, continue to certify for your benefits as long as you're not working. Certify correctly and do it every week if you can get online to do it. Please do that.
Right. Okay. And then there was another question that was very very specific, and I just want to let this person know that that we received their message and tell them to reach out to Legal Services as well before we jump off. But it was someone who was having an experience with a subleasee. They were the tenant officially on the lease, and they had a subleasee who they were fearful of because of an argument that was had where things got close to physical. I just want to let you know that we've seen this message and let you know to get in touch with Legal Services directly. There was some information at the beginning of this about domestic abuse and similar issues, but I just want to let you know we've seen your question and to get in touch with Legal Services. And
I will add to that as well.
Thanks,
and
Izzy.
I'm really sorry about anyone who's going through a situation like this. But I've been in touch with before and really like the Anti-Violence Project. They've got a lot of they're a good hub to be connected to resources for any kind of domestic violence situation and other kinds of situations that you might encounter during this period when you're feeling unsafe. So if you're not sure about what to do, definitely reach out to somebody who can help you. They're a good option. And if you have questions about what you can do legally to protect yourself, we're happy to help any way that we can.
Okay. Thank you very much, Izzy, and thanks to all three of you guys for taking all this time and speaking with us. Thanks to everybody in the chat rooms. We're going to pass it over to Deep Creep and Pascal now to play some music.
Thank you, Justin. Thanks for organizing this.
Cool.
Take care. Stay safe.
All right, guys.
Bye.
We'll see you
Bye.
later.